What's up, YouTube? I'm here doing my prediction video for UFC Fight Night Morales versus Sandhagen. The first fight is Bruno Silva versus Tigar. I think I say his last name. To me, Tigar looks like he's just the way stronger grappler. I think both these guys are primarily grapplers, and I mean Tigar is one of the highest rated flyweights in the world outside the UFC, and you can see why. His grappling is really solid, and I just think, like I said, I think he's going to be outpointing Silva on the ground, primarily with his wrestling. And I don't know if he submits Silva. I think Silva's too good of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt to get caught like that, but I think Tiga dominates all 3 rounds and wins a pretty clear 30-27 decision. Next is Tracy Cortez versus Stephanie Edgar. And to me, both these chicks are pretty well-rounded, but I just think Tracy has a pretty solid advantage in the wrestling. I think that overall, this fight will be back and forth, but kind of like the Bruno Silva fight, the one that I just called, I think Cortez will be able to kind of outpoint Stephanie with the wrestling, and she'll probably most likely get a 30-27 decision. Next is Giga Gigante versus Omar Morales, and this is basically just two really good strikers going at it. I think that Omar probably has a slight advantage in the wrestling and overall grappling, but I think Giga's... this is the hardest thing with this fight is I think Giga's the better striker, but I think Omar has the much better conditioning. And it's kind of going to come down to that second round, because I think Giga's definitely going to win the first round, but then the person who wins the second round is probably going to win this fight, because I think Omar's definitely going to win the third. I think it's a pretty close fight. I think, like I said, I think Omar hits harder, but Giga's just the better striker overall. And in my mind, it's a coin flip, because I just feel like this depends on when Giga starts slowing down and how much Omar can do to steal the second. But I'm leaning towards Giga. I just feel like because he is the better fighter, it's just a conditioning thing. If his conditioning's improved at all, then he should be able to win this fight at least pretty solidly by 29-28. So I'm going to lean towards Giga to win by a 29-28 decision. Next is Ali Alak, can't say his last name, versus Tony Kelly. And both these guys are kind of striker jiu-jitsu dudes. I think Ali has the slightly better wrestling. But I think this fight's also super close. I thought Tony Kelly won his last fight. It was a great fight. It was a fight of the night fight. I think he got really unlucky. I think he was starting to land a ton of really good strikes, and then he accidentally hit the other guy in the groin. The guy took the whole 5 minutes, and then he wasn't as gassed or as beat up. But I'm leaning towards Tony Kelly. I think that, if he can kind of fight like how he did in his last fight, I think he fights at a really high pace. He throws good combos when he's in the clinch and shit like that. And to me, Ali looked like a decent fighter, but I just think Tony Kelly is the better overall fighter. I think he's the scrappier dude, so I think he's going to win by finish in the late second, early third. Next is Impa Kasanganay versus Joaquin Buckley, and this is, once again, two really good strikers with pretty much solid wrestling overall. They're not from like any wrestling background, but they have good takedowns offensively, and they're good at defending and getting back up to their feet. To me, I think Impa's probably a little bit better with his overall technique, but Joaquin definitely hits harder. And I think Joaquin can keep volume with Impa Kasanganay, and I don't think Impa has the same type of power that Joaquin does, and I think that's going to be a big difference in this fight, because I don't think Impa throws a significant amount more than Joaquin, and I think Joaquin definitely hits significantly harder than Kasanganay does. And because of that, I'm leaning towards Joaquin Buckley. I think that he might even catch Impa, but I think he's definitely going to win at least 2 of the 3 rounds, just because I think he's just going to be doing more damage throughout the fight, and I don't think he's going to get taken down, so I think he's going to win either a 29-20 decision or maybe get a late TKO. Next is Chris Daukaus versus Rodrigo. I can't say his last name. And to me, Chris looks like he's the better striker, but I think Rodrigo's just too much better of a grappler. I think that just like Rodrigo's last fight, he took the fight down early and he got the submission early. I think he's a real high-level black belt, and especially at heavyweight. It's pretty rare to see jiu-jitsu guys that good. But I think it's going to be just like Rodrigo's last fight. I think the striking's not even going to matter. I think he's going to tie up with Chris, take him down super early, and then just take his back and win by rear naked choke. So I got Rodrigo winning by first round sub. Next is Tom Breeze versus KB Buhler. And to me, Buhler looks like he's pretty good everywhere, but not amazing anywhere. I think Tom Breeze, on the feet it's pretty close, but I think if Tom Breeze takes this to the ground, he's got a massive jiu-jitsu advantage, in my opinion. And that's more or less what I see happening. I think, it'll be back and forth on the feet, like I said, but eventually Tom Breeze will realize that, like, if he takes this to the ground, he can probably just outpoint this guy pretty easily. And I think he's going to win by sub in, like, the second or third round. Whenever he decides to take to the ground is probably when he'll either start dominating and win by submission. Next is Yusuf Zalal versus Illa. I can't say his last name. Illa, I know he's undefeated. He's like 7-0 or something like that. Most of his wins are from submission. He's from Spain. I think in terms of jiu-jitsu, they're probably even. Illa might have a slight advantage, but I just think in terms of the kickboxing, Zalal has a massive advantage. I also feel like in terms of overall takedown defense and ability to get back to his feet, I think Zalal's really good at that. I think that other than Illa catching him with a first round sub, I think Zalal's just going to keep it on the feet and outpoint him. I don't know if he'll finish him, but I think he's going to get a pretty dominant decision, if not a late TKO. So I'm picking Yusuf Zalal to win by, like I said, decision or TKO. On the main card, the first fight is Tom Aspinall versus Alan DeBoot. To me, Alan, he's a UFC newcomer, but he's like 7 or 8-1, and all of his wins have come by knockout. So I do think Tom is the better fighter overall. I think he's the better technical striker, and he's definitely the better grappler. But when you see dudes with records like that, when it's like 7 and 8-1, and all their wins are by KO, you can never count them out because it's like they're clearly good strikers. Or you know, they could be wrestlers with good ground and pound, but you know, they're clearly good at what they do if they have that many finishes. And to me, like I said, I think Tom is the better striker. I think he can outpoint Allen and eventually possibly take it to the ground and win by sub. But don't count Allen out. When you have that many knockouts, it's always possible that if Tom is keeping this a boxing fight, that Allen can catch him. But yeah, like I said, I think Tom is the better fighter overall, and I think he's going to probably take it to the ground because he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and I think he'll win by sub. Next is Marcus Perez versus Daukus. I can't say his last name. To me, both these guys are like striker jiu-jitsu dudes. I know Daukus is probably the big favorite coming into this fight because he was a KSW champion. But I'm picking Alex Perez. I think these guys fight pretty similarly, and Alex Perez always seems to do really well in fights where he's just fighting people. And you know, Daukus, although he's really good, I haven't seen him fight the level of competition that Perez has. Perez has wins over guys in the top 15 right now. And like I said, I think that Daukus, you know, will go out there and fight him. And I think the more Perez is in just a firefight, the more likely he is to win by catching Daukus in like a submission or with a big shot and win by knockout. So I think this will be a close back and forth fight, but I think Perez is going to get a late finish. Next is Ben Rothwell versus Marcin Tybura. And to me, one of the biggest things for this fight is whether Rothwell can repeatedly get back to the feet or not. Because I think Tybura will be going for a lot of takedowns and fighting on the back foot. And I think that Tybura has decent conditioning, but I don't think he has the conditioning to just keep doing what he needs to do if he can't keep Rothwell down when he goes for takedowns. To me, that's kind of the biggest thing in this fight. I think Rothwell has really good takedown defense, and he's great at getting back to his feet. And because of that, that's kind of why I'm leaning towards him. I think as long as he's keeping the pressure on Tybura, I don't think he's going to be able to backpedal the way he wants to. And I think the longer this goes, the more likely he is to tire out. And I think this fight's going to be like when he fought Timothy Johnson early in his career, where he was winning and then Johnson started to come on late, and then Johnson won by decision. And I think that's what Rothwell's going to do, except for I think he gets a finish. I think Marcin's going to be winning early, and then when he starts to tire out, Rothwell's just going to continue to walk him down and eventually catch him with something and knock him out. So I've got Rothwell by like third round knockout. On the co-main event, it's Edson Barboza versus Makwan Amirkhani, and to me, Makwan's really good, but I just don't think he's anywhere near Barboza's level. I don't think the striking's remotely close. I think Makwan is a really good wrestler. I just don't think he has the wrestling to take Barboza down and hold him down, especially in the first 2 rounds. Maybe in the third one, Barboza slows down a little bit, but especially in the early rounds, I think Barboza's takedown defense and ability to get back up is just going to be too good for Makwan. And I honestly don't think it's going to get past the second. I think Barboza's going to be doing way too much damage on the stand-up. Like I said, I don't think Makwan's only chance is to take this to the ground and submit Barboza, because I feel like conditioning-wise, Barboza's the much more conditioned fighter too. And like I said, I just don't see Macklin pulling this to the ground unless he does like some type of dive for something and drags him there by like going for a heel hug. Which he could do. He's a good grappler and he does do funky stuff like that. But other than that, I think Barboza just keeps on the feet and either finishes him with like leg kicks or body kicks in probably in the first or second round. So I got Barboza winning by KO. Finally, we got Marlon Moraes versus Corey Sandhagen, and this is really just kind of who can do, like, the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Corey. The earlier the fight is, it favors Marlon. And my biggest thing is that Corey has been caught in early rounds. You know, he got caught by Yuri and he got caught by Aljamain. I feel like, you know, he's susceptible in the early rounds because he's fighting guys that just have better either grappling or striking than him. His biggest strength is just his volume and his cardio. You know, he definitely has power, but it's one of those things where it's more of a volume thing than anything. And yeah, the longer this goes, it definitely favors Corey. But my biggest thing is I think in the first 2 rounds especially, Marlon just has such a massive advantage that I don't see it getting past the first 2 rounds. I think Marlon is just going to be chewing Corey up, and I think he's going to catch him in either a knockout or submission. If Corey tries to turn this into a grappling fight, I think Marlon's just a much better grappler. And I think in terms of striking, especially early, Marlon's just a much better striker. As long as Marlon can pull the trigger, he should be able to win this fight pretty easily. I think that the leg kicks or the punches, he's just better at both. And like I said, if Corey starts to get desperate and go for grappling, I favor Marlon in the grappling too. And this is what I see happening. I think it's probably going to end in the first 2 rounds. And I think Marlon's going to win by either knockout or submission. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.